On Sunday, September 27, 2020, and as the entire world was fighting COVID-19, the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan launched an attack on civilian settlements of the Armenian population in Artsakh region. The shelling triggered an all-out war between two bitter enemies over an area in South Caucasus, which for hundreds of years have been home to the first Christian nation, the Armenians. The following weeks coincided with several other media frenzies, such as the news of COVID-19 case surges and the U.S. election debates, which quickly overshadowed the human tragedy that has since been occurring. Despite an early ceasefire, heavy bloodshed continues in its most gruesome way, both on the front lines and across the civilian settlements, with dozens of daily deaths on both sides. Thousands of Armenian families have been displaced, and shelling of buildings, hospitals, churches, and schools continues daily. Armenia is a small country with limited resources, yet they are fighting an existential battle. Because behind an enemy that is equipped tooth and nail with the most advanced warfare lies an ideology that has the aim of eradication and annihilation of the small Christian nation. Azerbaijan is being fully sponsored by its big brother, Turkey. The Turkish government has not only provided their fellow Azeris with military support, but they are also the vindicators of the first mass killing and ethnic cleansing of the 20th century, the Armenian genocide of 1915, a plan partly executed to realize the great pan-Turkish dream. Turkey also tried secretly to send jihadist mercenaries from across the Syrian buffer zones to the front lines of the Artsakh war to aid Azerbaijani army via daily flights. Leaked videos of these radical Islamist groups clearly show that they have been brainwashed for an ideological war against a Christian enemy. Meanwhile, the rhetoric of both leaders as well as the conversations of their followers on Turkish media platforms signify that many of them perceive this conflict as the final solution to eradicate the Armenians. In addition, the government of Pakistan has been behind the Azeri regime since the first day of the war, both rhetorically and by deploying soldiers, while several Afghan extremists have expressed religious zeal to support their Muslim Azeri brothers in their fight against non-Muslims. In the south of the conflict zone, the Iranian clerics have also backed the Azerbaijani side by urging Armenians to vacate the lands that belong to Muslims. And if you thought that things cannot be worse for Armenia, consider the fact that the Israeli government, a country with its own history of genocide, is not only backing Azerbaijan, but they have sent some of their most advanced drones and missiles, the remains of which were found among the rubble of Armenian villages and cities. Lastly, let's not forget that Armenia was one of the worst-hit countries by COVID right before the war broke out, bringing this nation to the brink of total economic collapse. With Russia not showing much interest in meddling, it is currently a real David against not only Goliath, but also Melech struggling here for Armenia, and the only reason that they have still stood against all the odds is simply because they know their lands like the back of their hands. Artsakh has a unique topography in which foreign mercenaries fail to easily advance, while the guerrilla formations of the Armenian army can quickly mobilize across the mountainous terrain. In addition, Armenians have the moral high ground in this confrontation, since they were not the aggressor in this war, and are justly fighting to defend homeland. And unlike what the Turkish media is propagating, the area has been predominated by majority Christian Armenians for thousands of years. A thorough examination of the old maps of this region shows the number of the churches and cultural landmarks that date centuries back to a time that not only Azerbaijan didn't even exist, but the entire region was still free from Turco-Mongolian invasion. These historical facts, however, are being rapidly skewed by a powerful disinformation machine that is dominating your screens thanks to oil money and a much larger Turkish-speaking population. Turkish funding is as effective in the battlefield and corporate lobbying as it is within the media platforms, spending billions to divert attention and to construct a false narrative of the war. They understand that the civilized world will be concerned about the faith of the Armenians in that region, so their propaganda is working tirelessly to make things look like a regional conflict, while staining Armenia as the aggressor. But the elements of the game and Turkey's policies can clearly prove otherwise. In reality, an uneven ethno-religious confrontation has formed in this conflict, where less than 3 million Armenian Christians are under fire by close to 100 million Turkish Azeri coalition. And this not only directly impacts the balance of the war, but it also undermines impartial observation of the facts across the media sphere. where millions of comments, hashtags, upvotes, shares, and reports change the course of the trending news and impacts the audience's chance of seeing the reality. The Turkish cyber army is exercising its advantage of online user quantity to set the tone of their favorite narratives by pushing gruesome images of alleged war crimes by the Armenians, while in reality many of these images are either falsified or taken out of context. Many well-known international and Armenian public figures, musicians, tech people, and athletes have tried to raise awareness, but they are being attacked by mobs of pro-Turkish and pro-Islamist cyberbullies. Several other Turkish and Azeri cyber warriors who clearly respect no ethical values have launched a heinous psychological war to directly target the morale of the Armenian families by posting images of beheaded Armenian soldiers and desecrated bodies on social media. Their ISIS-style execution of prisoners is, however, not worthy of news broadcast. On the global media stage, TRT World, the immense Turkish propaganda machine, which has adopted the strategy of catering disinformation to global Muslim audiences in order to provoke anti-Western and anti-Christian narratives, is constantly generating stories with false headlines, not only by hiding Armenian civilian casualties, but exaggerating Azeri losses, which are of course unwanted, yet inevitable when a war breaks out. A quick glance at their news outlets will prove that they are effectively maneuvering on topics that will agitate and unite Muslims against the Armenians. And in the long run, these narratives have the potential to gather a lot more fuel, to be later directed against other non-Muslims as well. What can be observed from all this is that a modern-day crusade is in the making, behind which stands no other than Turkish President Erdogan. A man who has in the past decade taken all the necessary steps to restore an Islamic caliphate and is not shying away from proclaiming his real intentions publicly anymore. Sitting in their comfortable homes, the majority of Western audiences is either unaware or uninterested about the faith of the Armenians. For them, the notion of a religious war is mere fiction, something they think that they might only come across in the list on their Netflix movies or history books. But the war in Artsakh is the new chapter of the unveiling of a malignant expansionist Islamic State that has been slowly creeping in with alarming sirens. If the unprecedented pressure of Turkish government to persecute a German comedian for making fun of Erdogan seemed like an absurd joke, if the building process of a gigantic presidential palace, 30 times the size of the White House, with several underground bunkers and infrastructures from which secret leaks confirm that a full-scale atomic war can be conducted, is just a conspiracy theory, if the defeat of the 2016 coup in Turkey, which was aimed to restore democracy, secularism, and human rights for Turkish people, was just an internal affair, if Erdogan's ongoing pressure to shut down internet and social media in full force to control the flow of information among his own citizens did not sound any alarms, if the conversion of Hagia Sophia, the 1500-year-old famous Christian cathedral, into an Islamic mosque by Erdogan's direct order did not deliver a warning, if the expansionist view of Erdogan in the Middle East, Mediterranean Sea, Caucasus, and Asia Minor does not signal a clear and present danger, then perhaps you will remember this video again at a time in the future when not much can be done anymore. However, if you can already foresee the domino effects of the fall of Artsakh, then it is important that you act now to defend the integrity of the free world which the Armenian nation are currently the gatekeepers of. This small nation, whose core identity is based on national pride, Christian values, family structure, and respect for human rights, is losing its children in an unfair war against lawless mercenaries, while the world is busy elsewhere. Raised with human values and loving families, many of these Armenian soldiers were educated and trained to serve their nation and humanity. The amount of the loss that this nation is going through is inconceivable given its small population, but it is even more heartbreaking when we learn who each of these fallen heroes were personally. They were fathers, sons, husbands, wives, teachers, athletes, musicians, tech people, entrepreneurs, and doctors, all with potential and bright futures who have lost their lives in a fight against brainwashed jihadists. And while all men are created equal in essence, it's perhaps the difference in their values of life that makes their loss a human tragedy. We all have the choice to withhold taking sides, to remain silent, or to be neutral facing such tragic events. But as the great German writer Thomas Mann once said, tolerance becomes a crime when applied to evil.
Ես հիշում եմ արցունքները քո, երբ պատմում էիր ջարդերի մասին, ես հիշում եմ տունը մեր բակի բարդին ծերացած, ես հիշում եմ խոխոջն արվակի ու մանկական խաղերս անցած,